And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on the upcoming visit of President Abdel al-Sisi to Uganda. Now, the Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni will be hosting the Nile Basin Summit that will be held for the first time, actually, since 2010. Such summit was held. Now, also, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry travelled to Uganda to as part of the preparatory meetings for the upcoming summit. And joining us here in the studio to shed more light on this issue is Dr. محمد Abdalhalim, the political analyst. Dr. Abdalhalim, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start our discussion, let's check out this report regarding Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry travelling to Uganda, part of the Egyptian delegation, participating in the preparatory meetings for the upcoming Nile Basin Summit that will be taking place there, and we'll be right back.
President Abdel-Fattah attends a Nile Basin Summit in Uganda. Ahead of his arrival, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry arrived in Entebbe, Uganda, for ministerial meetings involving the Nile Basin countries. Senior government officials, including ministers of foreign affairs and water, attended two-day preparatory meetings on the 20th and 21st of June in the run-up to a presidential summit scheduled a day later. Presidential gathering is the first such summit to bring together all Nile Basin countries with a population of over 500 million. Historical gathering will open the way to exploring broad areas of cooperation in many development areas beyond the field of water. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ahmed Abu Zaid said during this week's meeting that Egypt aims to work towards bringing the views and positions on the Nile water closer by focusing on prospects for cooperation and achieving common goals, as well as expanding the scope of cooperation to include cultural and security cooperation as well as political coordination. Spokesman Abu Zaid said Egypt hopes the upcoming summit will come up with a common vision to relaunch the initiative based on the principle of the mutual interest of all countries. Officials said the summit would look at the results of earlier meetings as well as points of contention. Last week, President al-Sisi and his Ugandan counterpart Yoweri Museveni discussed preparations for the summit in a phone call. Uganda is the current chair of the Nile Council of Ministers of Water Affairs of the Nile Basin Initiative. Egypt froze its membership in 2010 over disagreements about the Cooperative Framework Agreement, more commonly known as the Entebbe Agreement.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Starting off our discussion right away, Dr. Abdalhalim, now, the first summit to be held of this nature, the Nile Basin countries, since 2010, when Egypt froze its activities over the disagreement regarding the Entebbe Agreement. Now, can you explain the reasons really of this disagreement and this summit not taking place for 7 years now?
Yeah, rightly so. The fact that the relations between Egypt on the one hand and Uganda on the other was very much frozen and came to a very much strained status for quite more than 7 years ago. And that was rightly so, I mean, due to a large number of reasons, actually. The first of which perhaps is, the non-consummation or non-consensus of opinion, the non-agreement between, Uganda on the one hand and all other the River Nile Basin countries, and Egypt on the other. The presidential authority was frowning on the conditions and stipulations that were to be stipulated on the part of all these countries to Egypt. First of which is the sort of the maritime security and the water safety, actually. The presidential authority is very much cautious and very much aware of the fact that under no circumstances, actually, the allotted amount of water to be distributed, actually, on a yearly basis to Egyptian territory should be denied in any conceivable respect. That's why, actually, the relationship was frozen since 2010. This is the first issue. And the second issue actually stems from the fact that the sort of the in advance or the prior notification. None of the establishment on the River Nile should be, permitted on condition that all other countries would agree. And the third reason, perhaps, consensus of opinion rather than the majority of agreeing among all other countries, including Egypt on the one hand and Sudan on the other, being the fusion country. So for a greater extent, the presidential authority was very much disagreeing actually on these far from being just and fair conditions stipulated in Egypt. And Egypt actually is playing such a very much vital role in the African Parliament during the course of the lapse of the 1 year ago. Egypt was participating to a greater extent, sharing a very good hand and very much participating in all diplomatic and strategic affairs concerning Africa. And this is one of the what you might call the integrating steps, and very much welcoming part on the part of the African continent actually to re-accept Egypt again as a strategic role, as a major player in the Middle East actually, as one of the major prerequisites of safety and security. So the major issue actually is to be discussed in there. First and foremost is the maritime, rights and the safety and security on the part of all those water resources, actually. So, the inauguration of the summit seems to be quite of a pivotal role, and the process of sending Mr. Sameh Shoukry, Foreign Minister, comes at this preparatory stage to prepare for the, the agenda and the the issues that will be discussed, actually, with the advent of the sort of summit.
Yes. Dr. Abdulhalim, now, after this frozen period since 2010, now what prompts the change? Why do we now resume these relations? It's definitely a good thing to resume and strengthen the relationships, but what is different now? Is it the difference in Egyptian leadership? Is it a difference in Egyptian strategy? Is it the concern about Egypt's share of the Nile water? What causes this change and the resumption of the relationship after 7 years?
Yeah, part of the reenactment, actually, of this strategic and diplomatic return, actually, to the heart of the Black Continent, so to speak, let me say, is the changing of the role of the presidential authority. And since the 2013, President Mr. Abdel is trying every now and again, actually, to reenact the sort of the relationship and to re-exist again at the heart of Africa. And that Egypt, for some reason or another, will restart its own prime of place, the sort of the place that it did occupy for quite a long period of time. This is on one hand. On another, actually, the problematic situation actually of the Renaissance Dam seems to be one of the pivotal points that should be discussed on a large scale, particularly as I've just mentioned that under no circumstances Egypt will be retracting or retreating from its own semper right to get its allocated amount on a yearly basis. This is at one stage. At another, actually, the new American administration, particularly, with the coming of Donald Trump, under no circumstances would represent the fact that it's by no means that the role that is to be played by the Egyptian authority is such a pivotal one indeed and very much crucial at this particular stage, not only in the Middle East, but the heart of Africa. And I think that since 1 year ago, the African Parliament would endorse the existence of the Egyptian authority side by side with the sort of distinctive role that Egypt did play actually in resuming and assuming what you might call, the non-permanent seat at the UN Security Council. So at this particular stage, there is no way to be in there actually other than without the Egyptian seat in the summit.
Yes. Dr. Abdulhalim, now, away from the Nile, the Egypt's share of the Nile water and the Renaissance Dam, the summit, there will be other topics that should be discussed. What other topics do you think Egypt has to discuss with the Nile Basin countries apart from the Ethiopian
on the diplomatic actually level, there is a large number actually of agreements between the Ugandan type and the Egyptian authority, for mutual free trades on the one hand, and there is also another treatments about what you might call the gas companies actually to be re-exchanged and reinstating experts on both sides. Among the other pivotal points that are to be discussed actually is the safety and security of the Libyan borderlines. Particularly, the adjacent borders that are very much, near to the eastern and the eastern part of Libya, on the part of Chad, Mali, Niger, and all these countries. the source of criminal acts and the source of terrorist actions in the meantime. That's why once the problematic situation of terrorist actions will be settled and sorted on the part of all these countries, including Uganda, and the midway between all these and that, I think that the border lines of Libya will be in like manner very much safe. And in like manner, actually, in no other means, that is the Egyptian border lines as well.
Dr. Abdulhalim, as you've mentioned now, Egypt is going into that summit after a lot of political developments that took place. We've seen the president participating in the summit with Donald Trump and the Saudi king as well. We've seen quite recently, the president participating in the German-African Economic Summit. We've seen the stand that was taken against Qatar. Do you feel that now Egypt is walking into this summit and discussing all these files, including the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and the Nile water file? Do you see it as now Egypt is stepping into that summit with a different political weight?
Of course, difficult stance, in much the same way that it is gonna actually to enter into the political game with new political views and new political stances and diplomatic issues actually, and agendas to be discussed actually. For the first time actually since quite a long period of time, Egypt is being the best among all other Arab countries, producing its straightforward messages, the first of which actually is, putting in for terrorist acts on the one hand, and in the meantime initiating a very strategic role not only on the Middle East arena actually, but on European level in the meantime. And I think the American administration is playing such a pivotal role actually in pushing forward every now and again the strategic importance of Egypt as a strategic player in the Middle East actually, consummating all, the lost chances actually that were lost during the previous presidential reign. The sort of the period in which Egypt would come to a standstill, motionless and standstill actually during the period of previous reign, in which all these attempts of diplomatic interferences and mediations on the part of Egypt were coming into a halt. To a certain degree of a stoppage actually. That's why it's a new period in which all the inaugurations of all diplomatic relations as being represented by the advent of Mr. Sameh Shoukry yesterday actually to Kampala will be changing the whole map of the road, not only for Egypt as I've just mentioned, as a very strategic player and very much safeguarding safety and security of peace and security in the Middle East, but also in the meantime actually for all the Middle East.
Yes. Dr. Abdulhalim, now going to such a summit, we all know that political relations are based mainly on interests and conflicts as well between different countries. Now, walking into such a summit, what can we get out of it apart from having the Renaissance Dam and the Nile water file secured or achieve or take positive steps in this regard? What else are we aiming to achieve, and what can we offer to countries such as Uganda and the rest of the Nile Basin countries? What do we have to bargain with and use in such a summit?
Apart from actually the maritime security and the water safety and the importance of getting our own allocated amounts of water, actually there is one fundamental fact, which is the cultural beliefs and the strategic notions actually to reenact it again. That's why I think that Mr. Sameh Shoukry yesterday did hold what you might call a very interesting meeting with Sir Magdi Jacob, the very much famous heart surgeon, cardiologist, just by way of expanding the sort of the charitable works that were to be assumed actually, not only at the River Nile basin countries, but actually for Uganda, for Sudan, for a large number of African countries actually, a large number of cardiac and heart surgeons were to be consummated with a great deal of success for free on the part of Sir Magdi Jacob, that distinctive authority actually, and one of the most eminent heart surgeons actually, not only in the Middle East, but actually in the whole Europe. And much of the same way that the role that is to be played with such a great deal of diplomatic and very much, helping factor on the part of Sir Magdi Jacob will, in somehow or another, will ease the tussles and will pacify the problematic situations in much the same way that I think it will bring together notions of interest. And it's a sign of goodwill on the part of our own presidential authority that it's not only actually a matter of give and take interests, actually. It's not very much based on materialistic needs. It's not very much depending every now and again on what you might call getting simple rights in turns for some rights to be given actually to Uganda and other countries, but also that there are cultural beliefs, that there are very much spiritual ties and very much charitable details that are connecting Egypt at the center of all modern technological aspects, as the center of medicine, as the central part of African dark heart actually, to be whitened on a large scale by all these charitable works on the part of Sir Magdi Jacob.
Yes, definitely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all these efforts are not, and the summit as well, is not only aiming to secure the Nile, Egypt's share of the Nile water, but also aiming to achieve a lot of economic benefits. And in this regard, Egypt's GDP actually rose 4.3% for the third quarter of the 2016-2017 fiscal year. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Planning Minister Hala Said said Egypt's GDP grew 4.3% in the third quarter of 2016-17 fiscal year compared with the same period the previous year, predicting a growth of 4% by year end. The climb is a result of growth in several industries, including communication, tourism and manufacturing. Minister said the balance of payments achieved an overall surplus of $11 billion in the first 9 months of the fiscal year, which ends this month. She added the budget deficit for the first 9 months dipped 8.4% from 9.4%. Central Bank report showed that tourism revenues jumped in the third quarter by 128.3% to $1.3 billion from $550 million a year earlier. Appetite for exports has increased since the country's floated its currency as part of economic reforms agreed with the IMF. Since the flotation, Egypt has seen the value of its currency decline. By half, the inflation reached record highs. Egypt's current account deficit narrowed by 37.7% to $3.5 billion in the third quarter, boosted by last November's decision to float the Egyptian pound. Remittances from Egypt abroad increased 10.9% in the January-March quarter to $4.62 billion from $4.17 billion in the same period. Oil exports rose 58.8%, whilst non-oil exports rose by 19.9%.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and now we're joined also here in the studio by Engineer Samir Riyad, the member of the Egyptian Industries Federation. Engineer Riyad, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Now, Engineer Riyad, Egyptian GDP has grew 4.3% for the third quarter of this fiscal year. Now, is there any sort of significant or specific reason for this increase? Is it the lifting of $100,000 of annual cap on foreign currency for transfers abroad? Is it the flotation of the Egyptian pound, which is a reason for many economical changes that has been taking place in Egypt so far?
First, it is a good sign, and we hope that we can increase it more and more.
Yes.
But definitely, it is an action of everybody in the society. I would rather like to put it this way. I don't want to put it for a reason. You know, there is too many reasons. If we are successful, then the 90 million is successful. I want to look at it from that thing. We have to encourage people to work. Our output per person has to be increased. This is the main thing, and I believe in it so much that, you know, the whole society needs to act together.
Yes. Well, Dr. Abdulhalim, now if we are looking at economic development here in Egypt, we've seen a lot of governmental efforts and presidential efforts in boosting the Egyptian economy. We've seen a lot of participation in a lot of economic conferences. The latest has been the German and the G20 summit with Africa. How much do you feel, along with all the agreements that are being signed by Minister of Investment, Dr. Sahar Nasr, how much do you feel this has been a catalyst for Egyptian economic development?
Well, I think the Egyptian economic status quo seems to be very much maximized, very much getting much more prosperous, actions and steps towards a better. The liberalization of the Egyptian pound that had been taken actually about 4 or 5 months ago would get its own, benefit in the due course of time. Despite the maximization in the prices and the lack of some, merchandise items every now and again, you can really anticipate that there is a sort of progressive plan towards, achieving safety and security as well as stabilization in the prices that will be in the due course of time. That's why I can really, that the ordinary consumer is quite aware that despite the previous periods of the maximization of almost a large number of prices, of a large number of items actually, but I think due the course of the next months, I think that as the presidential authority actually promised Egyptian citizens that things will be quite stabilized to a greater extent, and I think that prices in addition will be very much, in the due course of time, very much stable.
Yes, definitely. Well, Engineer Riyad, now this increase in the GDP, do you think that this is happening because the Egyptian market is now producing more, or do you think that because of the flotation of the Egyptian pound, prices have gone down, so Egyptian exports became more attractive for the international market, and thus the Egyptian exports increased? Do you feel that it's because of the increase in exports or the increase in Egyptian domestic productivity?
I believe we are more aware of our behavior. There is a lot of subsidies in terms of, the energy, the food, everything was subsidized, and people were misused a lot of things. And now we are appreciating more and more what we are doing. And this is one of the reasons I believe that is our, behavior has been changed slowly, because people are appreciating now things. For example, if you get for £1 once upon a time 200 loaf of bread, then you don't appreciate it.
Yes.
And this way I believe we are slowly appreciating what we are doing.
Yes. Well, we always say that if we want to really boost the Egyptian economy, we really need to produce more. Now, being a member of the Egyptian Industries Federation, do you feel that factories are actually working more? Are they producing more? Are they working with near full capacity? Are workers getting back? Are the closed factories reopened and now resuming production?
Well, this is one of the things, once in the last 20 years, we went, all the way for importation, and we didn't industrialize ourselves, or what we have got in terms of industries. Some of them closed down for a reason or another because they couldn't resist the competition. Competition is needed and is required, but at the same time, we have to, put our industry in the right track, in terms of, profitability, of working the right way, and our market needs competition. And I believe in a competition very much to enable us to control the prices and to control the quality of the goods. And this is one of the things which we have to focus on it, not only because there is no exportation without importation. And our local market as well, whatever it is needed, we should, of course, we are better off, to manufacture everything what is needed for the local market, but at the same time, at a good price and a good quality.
Yes, definitely. Now, Dr. Abdulhalim, looking at all the efforts that have been exerted by the government in terms of strengthening its economic relations, whether with the international community in Asia, in Europe, but also mainly with the African continent. How much do you feel has been achieved in actually maximizing economically on the Egyptian-African relations, and what should we expect after the participation in the German-African Economic Summit and the summit that will be taking place in Uganda between the Nile Basin countries?
Yeah, right. The economic summit in Germany, side by side with the upcoming one in Uganda, would give us, a clear testimony to the fact that there is one major step that is to be taken actually a bit forward, taking actually the interests of the people into a very much prosperous future. Not only stabilizing the economic market on the one hand, but also I think that it will open the gates and will open the way actually for new prospects, for jobs and for the mass unemployment, for finding suitable chances for the Egyptian youth actually to find something to fill the void of their own time, something that would turn their own lives into something very much prosperous, something very much economic. So all these summits and all these economic relations and all these, international communications on the part of the presidential authority, side by side with the ministers actually, will be in somehow or another very much helping to bring the problematic situations and economic tussles actually of the Egyptian people to a zero point. This is on one hand. On another, actually, it will pacify and settle, a large number of issues and will, in the meantime, fill the void of the everyday life of the people, actually, instead of, wasting their own days and dreams and their own aspirations and their own, interests into nothing, actually. They will find suitable chances, actually, to reproduce a large number of very much significant issues. So from an economic point of view, it seems to be quite very much profitable, all these summits, and the relationship actually will and somehow or another help Egypt actually to return to the international community, not only as it is represented by the economic summit in Germany, but also the Ugandan one. From another point of view also, you can really anticipate a great deal of success with the return of Egypt again to the sort of the place that it once assumed at the heart of Africa, when you can really find that Mr. Sameh Shukri, the foreign minister, is taking very much negotiated steps and very much, prospects into a better future of clarifying the issue for all the other African countries that were misplaced, that were very much misconceiving the importance of the role that is to be played in Egypt at the heart of the African continent.
Yes, definitely. Engineer Riyad, now, we are very happy, and as you've mentioned, we should be optimistic as well about the future of the Egyptian economy. Now, part of the reason why Egyptians are also optimistic is really the amendments and the changes that have been taking place regarding the new investment law. The investment law has been a problem for attracting many foreign investors here in Egypt. Now, in light of the changes that are taking place, how is it now more attractive for the foreign investor? Now, does the foreign investor still have to go through all the bureaucracy and all the red tape procedures that they had to go through? Is it still the same? If a foreign investor comes into the market, is it easily to get out of the Egyptian market, or is it still quite a difficult task to perform?
I believe there is a lot of action from the present government, and it has been taken place, and I believe, the encouragement of foreign investor is the Egyptian investor. Let us encourage the Egyptian investor. Let him have the first role, and let him, do the job, and definitely, automatically, the foreign investors will come.
Yes.
But I am not from the, thinking that only the foreign investor will put us in the right track. We are our banks, our money, our people, our business community. There is a lot of things that should be done. We talk about Africa now. Africa is rich with with the raw material and so on, and it needs to be industrialized. Let us have a focus on Africa. Information-wise, the press has to give us a lot of information about Africa. And let us see what we can do, maybe we can achieve a lot of things with Africa, because Africa is the future. Today,
Yes.
you know, I'm coming from the textile industries, and now China became a consumer in the textile industries, and now everybody is looking for an alternative, and there is the only place is Africa, where is the stability, and where is raw material, or where is you know, there is a lot of things in Africa can be done, and the future is waiting for Africa, and definitely we shouldn't lose this chance that we can participate in this economy.
Yes, definitely. Well, talking about the domestic investor or the local industries, now we've seen a lot of efforts by the government, a lot of money being pumped into governorates such as Damietta Governorate, really trying to strengthen the furniture industry there. Also money going to governorates in Upper Egypt, and such as Soheg and Inna, for instance. Now, as a local investor, local industries, do they see money going into these governorates and see opportunities for them to start their own branches or establish their own factories in these governorates? Do they see a new opportunity, a new fertile soil to actually really have an industry that will flourish?
Definitely, you know, we want to raise the standard of living per person, you know, that it means we are 90 million people. There is a long way to go. We need a lot of industry, to industrialize a lot of areas. Upper Egypt, it needs a lot of work, a lot of infrastructure. You know, there is too many universities has been, you know, graduating a lot of people without work and so on. It's about time that we focus on that, and we should see what kind of industry is suitable for us, and what can we do. And definitely the financing and the banks and so on has got a very important role, you know, and definitely the government is doing a lot of ideas, a lot of things, and you know, but we need as well, we need more, we need to support it, we need to act. Time is not in our favor.
Yes, definitely. Dr. Abdulhalim, now one of the main important sectors and industries here in Egypt for the Egyptian economy is the agricultural sector. Now, such a sector would definitely be directly affected by Egypt's share of the Nile waters, and this is probably the most important file that will be discussed in the upcoming summit in Uganda. How far do you think Egypt will be able to achieve in regards of the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and securing Egypt's share of the Nile water? Do you think Uganda can play a big role in actually securing or really influencing countries such as Ethiopia and Sudan as well?
Yeah, actually, Uganda will be playing the most pivotal role. For one thing, it is supposed to be hosting actually the sort of summit. For another, actually, you know, I mean, it presides over the whole interests that are going to be discussed actually in the due course of time. And we wouldn't have to forget that Uganda is supposed to be the first African country who would summon and call upon all other African countries of the basin, River Nile basin countries to re-include Egypt again, to re-invite Egypt again to be at the top of all these African countries. And this stems from the fact that they would really believe inside out the sort of the role that is to be played actually by Egypt, such distinctive one indeed. But had it not been for the fact that what you might call the Entebbe agreement that was to be denied and frozen for a greater extent, I think now, after the lapse of time since 2010, all other basin countries would recognize the importance of the existence of the Egyptian presidential authority actually on the scene. This is on one thing. On another, actually, I think that the upcoming summit would seem to be quite very much promising and very much optimistic. so long as the invitation comes from, a country with the expansion of Uganda. And in the meantime, Egypt and Sudan are to be supposed, actually, the fusion countries. They would share the same lot and the same destiny, I would say. That's why I think that a great deal of cooperation between the presidential authority of Egypt on the one hand and the Sudanese one, apart from the, some disputes and some discourse between the two, I think they would agree on one unifying end at the end of the day, which is, preventing any sort of tussles or barriers or any sort of, deterrence in the face of bringing the allotted and allocated share of water actually to be consummated and to be given directly both to Egypt and to Sudan on the other.
Definitely. Engineer Riyad, now speaking of the agricultural sector, do you feel that the government or the Ministry of Irrigation and Water Resources or the Ministry of Agriculture, do you feel that they are doing the most they can in at least securing some sort of a plan B if just in case the Egypt is unsuccessful or faces a lot of problems in securing its share of the Nile water?
I don't think there is any replacement for the Nile water, for the time being at least, But the Nile water is, Egypt is, its life depends on the Nile water. But let us put it this way, there is a lot of confusion about the information which we are getting about the amount of water and what kind of, restriction is going to be, if this Nahda dam is going to be built and so on. And I believe all of these things need to be, given to us a correct studies and correct information to enable us to judge things much better. Because up to now, I don't think there's someone which can judge even the amount of water which is available here in Egypt through the wells or through the Nile or so. I believe, all of these things needs to be adjusted and be seen about it to enable us to take the right decisions.
Yes. Well, this file has been quite an obstacle or a problem in actually resolving because it's been going on for quite a while now. Are you hopeful that the summit that will be taking place in Uganda with the President Sisi actually attending it, do you feel that Egypt will be able once and for all find some sort of a closure or a resolution to this issue?
Well, I hope so, and I'm firm believer that, God always with us here and will not let us, go down. And definitely, because nobody can afford to lose the Nile or to lose the water and to minimize the amount of water which we need it here. This is a subject which I believe is very difficult to even think about it.
Yes, definitely. Dr. Abdulhalim, now, talking about the Egyptian economy, we are witnessing day by day a lot of economic agreements being signed by Minister Dr. Sahar Nasr, really securing a lot of potential trade cooperation and developmental projects being implemented between Egypt and a lot of different countries. How much do you feel this will be helping the Egyptian economy right now? And do you feel that maybe at some point we will have to pay back all the debts with the interest rates to all the other countries that we are actually receiving money or cooperating economically with?
The fact that Minister Sahar Nasr, the Minister of International Cooperation, actually is doing a great deal of steps and very much successful efforts, actually. On each single individual day, she's traveling here, there, and everywhere, producing agreements and conferences and attending meetings, actually, all of which would give us the impression at the end of the day that there is a great deal of effort that's to be paid on the part of that very much successful minister, actually, to try to fill the gap and to bridge the gap, actually, between the high interest rates and, in the meantime, finding suitable chances, actually, for work, paying the debts, and in the meantime securing other alternatives, actually, just by way of maximizing, what you might call the rationalization of the individual demona of the Egyptian citizen, actually, And instead of those luxurious aspects, this is one of her own callings actually a couple of weeks ago, and instead of getting acquainted with all these luxurious aspects and bringing all those very much expensive items from abroad with foreign currency, that sort of foreign currency, no matter it may be, dollar or any other sort of hard currency, it should be saved for the most, eminent and the most economic target that will be reached at the end of the day just by saving the individual daily needs, actually, of the simple, mediocre Egyptian citizen, actually.
Yes, definitely. Well, Engineer Riyad, a lot of people are actually looking at these agreements being signed by Dr. Sah al-Nasr, and they're not just looking at it in terms of economic benefits coming to the country, but also they look at it in terms of technological benefits, participating or cooperating with a lot of countries such as Germany and Russia and Japan and China, getting the know-how and these technologies to Egypt. Do you feel that the Egyptian industries, the local Egyptian industries and the local factories, do you think that they will be able to maximize on these technologies and the know-how coming to Egypt?
Definitely, this is a plus point, but everything it needs time, and definitely, all what we are going to do with those things, that it depends now on how we are going to adopt those systems and those, privileges which we can, reflect on our industry and our output and all of these things. Definitely, this is step one. And it needs more steps afterwards to enable us to reach what we want.
Yes. Well, how long should we actually wait? Because we always hear about countries that totally transform their economies in 20 years or 40 years. How long do you think Egypt would take? How much time do you think it will take to actually transform its economy to be a strong, developed economic superpower?
Well, definitely it will take some time, but as I said, time is crucial, and definitely, education is very important, and we have to look at it. We have to look at it from different angles. The specialization, the schools, the industry needs calibers, and and these calibers, where shall we get it from? We have to modify our system. We have to get people to be and to be, and to be educated, to enable us to do and to tackle the problems which we have it in the industry. If we want to industrialize an area, we want to know where we can get the specialized people from. If we don't have the schools and the education systems, let us adopt education system from abroad. And we don't want to invent things.
Yes.
Because this is definitely a crucial thing. And everybody is going to the universities and graduate from the universities. This has to be stopped, because it's in every province today we have got a university with thousands of people which is graduate, and they need a desk, and we need people to work.
Yes, definitely. Dr. Abdalhalim, now Egypt is definitely developing its political relations and its political status, whether in the Middle East region or the international community as well. And we see the difference by the week. Do you feel that, or how would you compare the political developments taking place in Egypt compared to the economic developments? Do you feel that we are developing economically as fast as we are politically? Do you feel that the government is investing in its infrastructure as much as it is in the political status? Do you feel, because we can see a lot of developments taking place in the energy sector, renewable energy, but what about the health sector? What about the educational sector, as Engineer Riyad mentioned?
Yeah, actually, I would really endorse what Mr. Riyad said, that education seems to be very much playing a very distinctive role, actually, in the progressive aspects and the developing of all the aims and all the educational aspects that will be developed, and somehow or another will be, directly or straightforwardly influencing the political dimension, in much the same way that the political dimension actually is very much coordinated and very much deeply tied to and very much connected with the economic stability. Once the political authority is very much stable here, there, and everywhere, on almost every territorial inch in Egypt, you can really find some sort of stabilization actually within the economic system. Much the same way that the educational system also, once it seems to be quite very much profitable, very much progressive, very much keeping in line actually with the highest standards of the other educational and modern educational systems of Europe and of the United States of America. You can really adapt what is to be adapted in there into the inside in here, and both of each will give us the impression that through education, through stability in the political system, will in somehow or another deeply influencing actually the maximization of the economic standard of almost each single individual citizen.
Yes, definitely. Engineer Riyad, now very interesting statistics came out. Now, the tourism revenue, the tourism industry recorded revenues that went up by 128.3% compared to the same period last year, which is about $1.3 billion this year compared to $550 million last year. Now, we understand the tourism industry is definitely a cornerstone for the Egyptian economy and a very important source of foreign currency coming to Egypt. How much of an improvement or development took place in the tourism sector here in Egypt? Do you feel it?
Well, not really, but you know, let us talk about 5 years ago.
Yes.
There was about 13 billion or 14 billion.
Yes.
Okay, let us reach it. And then, you know, then we cannot compare last year with this year, and then we talk about 128%. This is not good.
Yes.
Even to talk about it in this term. But what we are targeting, we are a country which possesses a lot of potential for tourists. Let us explode it. And thank God we have got stability to a great extent. And, you know, but we need some more effort, you know. And I believe, you know, the traffic in Cairo should be seen about it.
Yes, definitely.
I am not in favor of, you know, 94% of our land is desert and we are ignoring it. It's about time that we have to look at it from this. No more building in the Nile Valley.
Yes, definitely. Dr. Abdulhalim, now speaking of the transportation and the traffic system here in Egypt, there's a lot of talk about the subsidies over petrol and gas really being lifted. The prices will increase. How much of these measures will affect the Egyptian citizen and in turn the Egyptian economy?
Of course, if it is to be enacted, is to be raised actually during the course of the next months. It will have such a very much straightforward and very much dire impact on the normal mediocre Egyptian citizen. But I wouldn't say that there isn't any sort of change in the prices of fuel in the due course of time. I think that, you know, I mean, things will remain as they really are. Prices, I think, wouldn't in any conceivable respect be maximized. But I think that the problem of transportation is one of the highest problematic situations that we really face on a daily basis actually here in Egypt. I think that we really need the enforcement of law. We need, you know, very much restricted laws actually to be enacted just by way of minimizing the road accidents on the one side and on the other rationalizing the behavior and attitudes of the drivers, of the chauffeurs, just by way of keeping in law and very much safeguarding actually the lights and, you know, I mean, the regulations and the regularities of the codes of the laws actually, I would say, of traffic. That's why apart from the prices, apart from the change in the prices of the fuel, the oil, apart from, you know, all these, you know, apparent gestures of chaos on a daily basis on the Egyptian streets, we need enforcement of law.
Yes.
We need, you know, I mean, stabilization actually within the field of the codes of honor and the ethical values to be reenacted again. But apart from this and that, I think that law would seem to be the master, actually, of almost all the things that will direct and straightforward, actually, the daily attitudes of the Egyptian chauffeurs and drivers into the right path, into the even road.
Definitely. Engineer Riyad, one final question because we're running out of time. Now, we are expecting these subsidies to be lifted, which in turn will increase prices of the commodities, which will in turn be some sort of a burden on the Egyptian citizen. Now, it can really help the Egyptian GDP, and it can narrow down the fiscal budget deficit. However, it can be of a burden on the Egyptian citizen. How do you balance things out?
Definitely it has got its advantage and disadvantage. But again, as I said, lifting the subsidies, it could, make the individual appreciate a lot of things, and then then he will not misuse a lot of these opportunities which the government is used to give it to him. And now, I believe, that people have to work. People,
Yes.
Everybody has to work, has to increase his effort, has to do his output more, to get more money, and so on, to enable him to survive, And this is definitely, this is the advantage which we are, giving now to the individuals and to the whole people, that we have to work more, we have to do more to enable us to earn more, to enable us to cope with the higher prices.
Yes.
This is definitely is an advantage. But of course, it has to go gradually, that people get used to this and so on, And definitely, I'm in favor of lifting the subsidies. I'll be
Yes.
honest with you, because I believe, there is a lot of things which people are underestimating, and they are not using everything in the right way.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, definitely a lot of economic developments and political developments are taking place by the day. We're going to be following up on the latest developments in regarding the Uganda summit, the Nile Basin countries summit that will be taking place there, and in turn see the results, whether in the Egypt's Nile share of Nile's water share, and also the economic agreements that will be signed as well. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished guest, Dr. محمد Abdalhalim, the political analyst. I'd also like to thank very much our distinguished guest, Engineer Samir Riyad, member of the Egyptian Industries Federation. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.